Welcome to Weekly Digest, where we highlight the work of ministers of government as they push the administration's development agenda. This week ended with the handing over of the Dr. Yesu Prasad Clinical Education Center, but we will get to that in a moment. Guyana has taken a robust approach to protect its people and valuable resources from all threats of oil pollution through the establishment of a national oil spill contingency plan. The Civil Defense Commission recently completed a plan which satisfies requirements on the domestic legislation and policies as well as international conventions. In his policy statement, Prime Minister Brigadier Retired Mark Phillips said the government is aware of the need to preserve and protect the environment from all chemicals that pose a danger to the health of humans and other species. The government, he said, is committed to taking appropriate measures in accordance with the law, industry best practices, and relevant international conventions verified or entered into force by the government. After only 75 days in office, the government made good on its commitment of delivering sustainable housing solutions through the Dream Realized Housing Initiative on Friday, October 16 and Saturday, October 17 at the National Stadium. On the final day, Minister of Housing and Water, the Honourable Colin Crowell, announced that the team was on target.
We deemed this activity a success for what we intended it for. When we started out, our main focus was to ensure that we deliver a number of cycles and transports, and that exercise is ongoing. In fact, we are on target to complete our 350 totals that we have for the 2 days.
In addition, the ministry also facilitated new applications. Minister Rodriguez emphasized the importance of the event.
We want to drive housing in Guyana. We see the importance of the construction sector in turning the wheels of the economy. And so with title distribution, with encouraging ownership, we allow persons the opportunity to approach the banks so they can obtain their loans, so they can build their homes.
Meanwhile, at Chiang Mount on Sunday, October 18, Minister Rodriguez told Eagle residents that the promises made by her while campaigning earlier in the year had been fulfilled.
When I made the commitment in February of this year to ensure that I make representation on your behalf so that you can have a well in this community, because I heard about the challenge with the water system that has been broken for more than 2 years or maybe longer, I thought I have to address it.
Keeping good on the promise made, the minister announced the construction of a $19.3 million well for the small farming community. The contract was awarded to Arkisoon Contracting Services. Construction on the well is expected to be completed by Christmas. On Saturday too, Minister Mustafa visited farmers at Belladrum Region 5.
I am committed that we can excavate the Belladrum Canal immediately. We can also do those canals that are bringing in salt water to your crops. We'll try to resolve that and ensure that we stop it. I will ask our engineer to work along with you all. Work along. You'll have support directly from the MMA. We are now looking at a new board of directors at MMA and give more support to farmers.
Farmers were encouraged to form a committee to acquire more strategic support in the area. The Ministry of Agriculture is seeking to improve the livelihood of farmers in rural communities and will continue to work with the public, private and international organizations to implement programs that will increase agriculture productivity and income for farmers. Minister of Agriculture, the Honourable Zulfikar Mustafa, said one key component to strengthen rural sustainable development is to invest in agriculture mechanization, innovation, infrastructure and technical assistance. The minister was making a virtual presentation at the second sitting of the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization's FAO 36th Regional Conference for Latin America and the Caribbean on Tuesday. Though Guyana will benefit tremendously from the emerging oil sector, Minister Mustafa explained that the availability of this revenue presents a challenge to the traditional agriculture sector, as it is likely to influence Guyana's labor supply, wages, and exchange rate. This, he noted, could impact the competitiveness of the tradable sectors such as rice and sugar in Guyana's overall economy. Meanwhile, Foreign Secretary Mr. Robert Bassad has noted that public and private investments are critical to the expansion of Guyana's agriculture sector, even as government moves to redesign the policies of the industry. Mr. Bassad made these remarks Tuesday during a virtual seminar hosted by the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, ICA, to discuss measures to increase intra- and extra-regional trade for Guyana.
The point I want to make is that foreign markets are very important in allowing Guyana to access commodities and services which it lacks the resources to produce. Case in point is intermediate items such as capital equipment, machinery, and so forth. Approximately 78% of Guyana's total inputs are of intermediate items that are used to produce other commodities. Take, for instance, the agricultural sector. This would include pesticide, chemicals, and other variable inputs and machinery. Foreign markets also allow for economies of scale and scope and can therefore support diversification and value added once the requisite policy support is provided at the national level.
Mr. Bassad explained that challenges related to food safety measures are areas of grave concern for Guyana, given its inadequate scientific capacity to undertake some of the required testing.
I now wish to examine some of the challenges in the agricultural sector, and we've divided that up into two categories, foreign and local. In terms of foreign, the use of subsidies on fair trading practiced through dumping, growing use of non-tariff barriers to trade, such as technical regulations and sanitary and phytosanitary regulations, limited transportation connectivity among CARICOM countries, are critical challenges associated with foreign trading partners and limit gains that can be achieved by trade. On the local front, these challenges include infrastructural as they relate to poor farm-to-market road transportation networks, inadequate port facilities, and other key binding constraints, such as limited access to finance, cost of energy with respect to food processing, feeder larceny, the lack of sufficient cold storage facility, lands not adequately developed to support access to water resources. Taxes on land are also of great concern. And also the issue in terms of energy, which has been plaguing and hindering an agro-processing and even an agro-industrial sector in our country.
Guyana has approximately 20 multilateral, regional, and bilateral trade agreements. Some of these include the Caribbean-Canada Trade Agreement, the Caribbean Basin Economic Recovery Act, and the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. The Civil Defense Commission has prepared a shelter for the squatters of Success East Coast Demerara in response to the situation there. The shelter grants 24/7 access and will house 48 squatters, but has the capacity to accommodate more than 150 persons with the necessary spacing in keeping with the COVID-19 guidelines. CDC's Director General, Lieutenant Colonel Kester Craig, tells us more.
Once you show an interest to be at a shelter, you're required to be registered. You will go through some screening, and once based on questions and observation, persons, if they are required to do COVID-19 testing, the Civil Defense Commission will be working with the Ministry of Health to ensure persons are tested.
6 classrooms with 8 beds per room, 2 showers, and a kitchen have been prepared. Rooms are divided into male and female sections with consideration for families. Meals, toiletries, and recreational activities will also be catered for by the CDC. During a meeting with stakeholders at the St. Stanislaus College on October 21, To address congestion at the Stabroek Market area, Minister of Home Affairs the Honourable Robeson Ben said the fundamental interest is to bring order, optimal efficiency and safety at the location.
And which is why we wrote fire lane up and down those areas right in front of the market. So that they can be off, it can be reasonably clear, and people can know if they hear the thing, fire trucks coming, we don't have no obstruction in front there.
The filling of minibuses on what is termed the hot plate is another cause of congestion. Minister Ben said this matter will have to be addressed by the Ghana Police Force.
The so-called special hot plating buses in respect of the operation of the turn system. I think we have general agreement that there ought to be a turn system. Do we agree? Yes. We agree. All right. So now we got to find how we can operationalize the turn system at these routes, and how we can put a crimp on these touts, right? We must know who's the touts and the thief about the place. The police should be able to tell me from the undercover and other people who's the regular boys with trouble there.
Additional efforts will be made to slow the speed of the COVID-19 pandemic. The stakeholders meeting is the first of a series which will be held to effectively address congestion in the Stabroek Market area. Minister of Public Works, the Honourable Bishop Juan Edgell, says contractors are partners in Ghana's development and not hustlers trying to make a quick dollar. As such, he outlined a list of principles he expects contractors to adhere to while executing roadworks for the government.
I want a new culture. Whether it's a little village street, a major highway, or an interior road, the quality of our work must be admired, and when examined, must pass the test. And the test not just of the lab, but a test of appreciation of the people who we are providing that service for.
The minister's remark came during an engagement with road contractors at the Artichon Conference Centre. Additionally, Minister Edgell said the ministry will have a zero-tolerance approach to stalled works after contracts would have been signed. The minister said the administration will not continue to encourage malpractices. Minister Edgell expressed his displeasure that projects which were signed off on the last day of 2019 are yet to begin. Further, the Ministry of Public Works will be moving towards the timely resolution of disputes to ensure the progress of projects. Over in health, Ghana is able to access COVID-19 vaccine through COVAX. Minister of Health Dr. Frank Anthony says Ghana is among the 92 countries eligible for coverage on the COVAX, a body of organizations including the World Health Organization, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, and Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Gavi's mission is to ensure equal access to vaccines.
They have come together, pool their resources and skills to create this platform to allow people to access vaccines. They intend to procure 2 billion doses of vaccines.
Ghana submitted its application for vaccines more than a month ago, the cost of which will be covered by COVAX, with a substantial sum covered by Gavi. Next, we learn of new standardized COVID-19 guidelines for ICUs to follow. The Health Minister says as government seeks to develop and upgrade ICUs at hospitals countrywide, the guidelines are being simplified for clearer understanding and execution.
So later this week, the clinical committee that I've established, they'll do two things. One, they're updating the treatment guidelines for COVID-19 in Guyana. And secondly, as part of those treatment guidelines, to put out specific guidelines on when to put a patient on the ventilator, what are the measures that you'll be using to put that patient on the ventilator, And so that anyone across the country, once they follow these guidelines, they would know when somebody would need to go on the ventilators. So this would be standardized guidelines, and everybody who would be treating COVID-19 patients would be trained on these guidelines.
During the week, reports surfaced of a possible spike in COVID-19 cases in some districts of Region 1. Questions were raised of trained personnel on hand to give assistance. Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, relieved those concerns, assuring that trained medical teams are in all regions countrywide.
Region 1 initially had a number of cases. Then in the Maruka end, you had a spike. And then you would recall that there was a lockdown, and then eventually that number went down. Now what we are seeing in Region 1 is at the other end, in the Mabaruma end, we are seeing a lot more cases. And again, we are managing to look at the villages where we are seeing spikes. So like, for example, we have seen a spike in Quibana, and we have established a team that went into the community, that worked with the local leadership there to talk to them, to explain to them how this virus is being spread, what precautionary measures they can take, what public health measures they need to take. And with the community's compliance, we have put these things in place. Plus, we have localized a curfew for certain communities in the region, all in an effort to reduce the spread to neighboring communities. We have a core set of personnel in every region. So they're there, they've been trained to deal with COVID and all of that, and they can work collaboratively, not just to do the clinical part of it, but also to look at how you do contact tracing, how you look at environmental sanitation, and a whole host of other things. So we have a team of people who would work together to be able to manage the disease in the region.
Also, government has ordered 20,000 antigen tests for the hinterland region. Dr. Anthony says the rapid antigen test ordered for selective hinterland regions will increase the testing capacity in these areas.
We have on order an antigen test. So this is not the RT-PCR test that we take samples and bring them to the lab. This antigen test is one where right at the site where you're seeing the patient, if you suspect them to have COVID, you can run the test there, and within 45 minutes you'll get back the results. So we have placed an order for 20,000 such tests, and hopefully by sometime in November we will be able to get those tests, and once we get them, the idea is to deploy them to the interior areas because of the challenge in getting test results to them and getting tests done quickly.
Now here's that story we promised, the handing over of the Yesu Prasad Clinical Education Center.
In Guyana, we confuse frankness with partisan speeches. But for us to move as a society, we have to be frank, we have to be open, we have to be tolerant. But in all of it, we have to be respectful. So where are we today? And why are we here? If you look at all the countries that would have advanced in a marked manner, you would realize that in their budgets, they spend a lot on research and development. If you look at companies that are celebrated across the world, they're celebrated because they invested in research and development. If you look at us, this category of expenditure carries the lowest weight both in the private sector and the public sector, and we have to fix it. We have to fix it. Otherwise, we cannot be innovative. We cannot have our local talent coming through and the potential of making mind-blowing changes on the global scale. We have to fix it at the private level and at the public level. And that is the conversation we have to have.
That was Government in Action. Join us again next week. For more details, visit our website at dpi.gov.gy and our social media platforms.